I've tinkered and upgraded my investment property P&L and metrics. I'll get this synced over. I have this form. I'm going to update this, but you can find this link on my YouTube channel where I give out this sheet and other things just that you can use to educate yourself to make better decisions and see what real estate could be or could be improved for you and your wealth building efforts. So, what is this? This is my sheet, and I've got it so you can do lots of editing and inputs. You can tinker with the yellow stuff. The gray stuff is going to spit out calculations that are, some of these are kind of all tied together. I've got projections in here based on certain assumptions that I disclose. I've got notes in here about what this is getting you and where it's coming from, why you might want to think about certain things or defining certain terms. So, let's start with an example. This is actually something that just got removed from our MLS. This was a duplex that was overpriced, that was sitting over here in southeast Roanoke, right here in the bend of the river, very walkable with the Roanoke Greenway here. And then you have Riverland, which is more of a main drag to cut through and get over to Garden City and other parts of southeast. And then up into southeast, downtown Roanoke's up here. So it's a nice little growing spot. But one thing that does matter when it comes to Roanoke, not relevant to this, but in general, floodplains. So this part of southeast has a lot of floodplains here. So purchasing anywhere in these brown areas would require or be best practice to have flood insurance. But not the point of this video. The point of this video is we're going to have just a real live subject, and we're going to talk about the numbers so that you can see how this investment sheet could be used for you. So as you can see, this duplex has been nicely renovated, updated cabinets. They've gone in and done some stuff. What is not obvious at first is that it actually has no air conditioning. So in my professional opinion, this list price, as if it had air conditioning, it might be fair. But with window units, and then also upstairs is baseboard electric heat, which a whole nother tangent, probably a whole nother video's worth of what vacancy and turnover costs you in real estate investment. But if you've got these baseboard heaters and you're expecting your tenant to pay the electric bill, they're going to probably not to be too happy come winter when it's really cold and that electric bill is really, really high, and they're probably going to think about leaving so that way they can find something that's more affordable without surprise costs, like I want to heat my house and it's going to cost me a fortune. They might want to go find somewhere with a furnace or something that's going to be more cost-effective heat source. And then you as the landlord are going to have a higher turnover, aka higher vacancy rate, and that's expensive. So all in all, there's some big cons to this one, and Roanoke has older inventory in general, so those are things to just kind of look out for. And we're going to use it anyway. So I've got already plugged in here. Whoa, I forgot. Hold on. So I've got marketing stuff in here now. I'm clever. But what you would do, because you wouldn't have the ability to edit this one yet, you would come over here, hit File, you'd make a copy for you, you'd call it whatever you want. Riverland. Uh-oh, it flipped over. I'll fix this. We're going to call it Riverland. Listen here, a little screen share. You're going to hit make a copy. It's going to work. It's going to load. And then you can come up here and say, David, thank you so much. You're the best, and I don't care anymore. So now you have a nice, pretty sheet to play with. Now, what you don't know is that over here, this isn't really even disclosed in the agent marks or anywhere else, but this guy, the listing agent, he's also the owner, Brandon, he's got it such that the bottom is now rented. So he's got the bottom unit rented for $1,500 a month, which, wild. No air conditioning, $1,500 a month for a 2-bed, 1-bath setup. Again, the location is actually pretty nice and up and coming. But he's got that. And then the upstairs is, I'm going to speculate, you could probably push. Like if you can get $1,500 downstairs, upstairs isn't as big, isn't as spacious, not as many extra rooms, but $1,250 might be reasonable. And then here's their list price. Interest rates with a certain, investment property kind of mindset, they're going to be a little higher than market. 30-year term. So what this is doing over here is calculating your approximate principal and interest if you were to use these loan terms theoretically. And that's going to put this down here. It's going to give you an automatic calculation of your debt service that is just the P&I, so this is just principal and interest, And then up here, you would input your property taxes and your insurance, so that way you can budget this out. If you have a DSCR loan, it might be in an escrow. If you're more of a commercial note, this would be something you're paying individually. So the loan type will kind of depend on where this is coming out of, but the math will hold. So the P&L side of things, you've got the whole year being forecasted. You have your sums down here with what your expenses are costing you, and then you get some nice end math down here. So this is calculating cash flow at the bottom. So this is income, operating expenses, income minus operating expenses, NOI, net operating income, coming out here. Debt service does not actually fall into your NOI calculation, which is why I've built it this way, because taxes and insurance do. So this row throws in your debt service, so you can find out your total expenses, and then from there, subtract the total from the income, and then you've got your cash flow. How much is left over at the end of the month once everything is paid for? And this sheet is pre-built to give you a lot of expense paid for. So this has got building maintenance budgeted in. So 10% CapEx savings. So if you're not actually spending this, you could be setting this on the side. So for more transparent purposes, this would theoretically be zero-sum months, and it's going to perform a lot better. But if you're going to be prepping for a roof or other big expenses when they come, this is automatically populating 10% of what's coming in as an expense, to give you very realistic numbers. Just to be pragmatic with you, because this isn't trying to sell you rainbows and sunshine, this is trying to sell you reality. So also in here, we've got gardening and landscaping, and I've got it such that, you know, you've got a guy coming out to mow it twice a month or once a month, depending on what your expense is. So, you know, if you can't get anybody for $75 a mow, then you might want to budget higher than this. But this is kind of coming out every 2 weeks or so, rough budget. We're also budgeting for management fees. So obviously, if you're going to do it yourself, you can just change this to 0, and then this is the leasing fee, change that to 0. Numbers are going to get much, much better. But again, we are trying to underwrite this in a fashion where you're looking long term, you're going to offload the work, and you're going to hire a professional who comes out and takes this burden off of you and just wires you money at the end of every month. So this is set to 10%, which is pretty common standard practice. You'll find anywhere from 8 to 12, sometimes 15%, depending on who and what all they do. And then this is a leasing fee, so usually when a new tenant is acquired, property managers are going to charge you 50% up to 100% of the first month's rent. So this is 50% of both leases being factored in just at the beginning to give us an idea of that cost. There's more to play with. Miscellaneous expenses, if you want to cover internet for your tenants, if you have to cover the gas bill because it's a duplex and the gas is just one and not metered out, but the electricity is, like, these are all things that this sheet's ready to play around with and let you tweak and forecast. And then what it does, I got a lot going on over here with projections. So year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. So this is actually increasing and doing some math based off of this number. So year 1, we're assuming this. Year 2, rents are probably going to go up a little bit. I mean, depending on what's going on, I just did a very conservative 4% year-over-year increase on the rent rate. And then operating expenses are actually going up at a slower rate. Kind of historically, that's more accurate. This is just trending with inflation. So 3% depending on the year and what expenses are becoming more expensive. This recreates a new net operating income. The mortgage, though, that's fixed unless you've done something crazy, but this sheet is built to be a fixed rate. So that payment stays the same as the years go by, which gives you a moving, revolving, changing, increasing cash flow. Your cash flow is going to change year over year. Obviously, this is perfect world scenarios where, you know, it's rented every month and the costs stay pretty much predictable. But remember, I do have budgeted in $3,300 a year going towards CapEx, maintaining the asset, keeping it nice, making sure tenant needs are addressed. So that way they don't want to move because you're keeping the property up, which is a win-win. Tenant's happy and your asset is well maintained. So I like to work with investors who are like-minded like me, where we're not necessarily 100% focused on what's happening every month. We're focused on the big picture, where we're maintaining the asset, and therefore we're seeing the market value increase because we're not deferring things. We're keeping the property up. So year over year, real estate average over the last few decades is a 4% year-over-year appreciation in your market value. So if we bought this one for $350, theoretically, year over year, it's going to go up to year 5, where we now have a $400,000 asset. Our cash on cash is not really performing that well until we hit that mark. And then our cap rate, similarly, it's fine. 8% is really nice. 10% is wonderful. But it goes up with time as well. And our DSCR rate improves. Now, I'm going to make individual videos for these terms. That way you can dive into them if you don't know them. But for the purposes of this video, this is what's happening. And obviously, as our expenses go and become more cash flow positive, our break-even occupancy rate improves, where we're breaking even depending on how our vacancy is performing. So lots going on here, and the reason I talk about that is because those back over here are what's creating this. So projections and estimates, you got your year 1 cash flow. Obviously this isn't performing very well year 1. And year 1 DSCR is under 1, which again I'll talk more about, but under 1's not ideal. Harder to get a loan, more expensive, higher interest rate, yada yada yada. Now, year 3, year 5 net gains. These are more so predictions based off of 2 assumptions. That our asset is being maintained, the market is not declining, and we are seeing appreciation year over year, as real estate is for. And it is also assuming this increase in cash flow based on increasing some minor increase in rents and some increase in operating expenses. So those 2 things are coming in here to create this number. So by year 3, this asset has returned, pure return, $14,000. Year 5, things start to look better. Now again, this is going to be subtracting your equity and factoring that in. So you bought it for this. A year 5 projection for your return is talking about this number minus this number. So that's your new equity, which isn't something you have access to, but is part of your net worth now. And what you've brought in your cash flow, assuming over here an 85% occupancy rate. So this is not a sunshine and rainbows number either. This is assuming you spent, what's the math? I think it's like 1.8 months vacant every year. You have paid a management company every year to release the properties. You have seen it be empty, and you have lost money for a month of every year. So these are very conservative numbers. If you want more sunshine and rainbows, you put in 100%. Whoops. 100%. Hold on. Flip. And the numbers are much better. And of course, you can tinker. Let's say you are self-managing. You're not paying this every year. Your numbers are way better because you're doing a lot of the work and you're not paying that out. And, you know, if you want to go crazy and assume that the house is perfect when you bought it, nothing's going to break in 5 years. So you're not spending anything fixing anything, please. You're doing really well. But again, these are not meant to be sunshine and rainbow numbers. They're meant to give you a dose of reality so that you can see what this might look like for your management and your wealth building efforts. So in a perfect world, or not even a perfect world, in a very realistic world, these numbers track well, and you're seeing about 40% of your money come back from, this is calculating based on how much you've put into it in just your purchase. So the down payment is coming from there, and then it's assuming a cost of sale, which I talk about a little bit more and will in another video. Cost of sale tends to be around 4%, 2 to 4 really. So that's what's going in here, and all that's clarified in these notes so that you can kind of see what's the assumption, what's the breakdown, why are these numbers what they are. So again, this is based off of a real property, theoretically, $1,500 on the bottom, $1,250 on the top. I'm pretty sure these are fairly close. I think the taxes on that one might actually be closer to $1,900. Depending on your insurance, you know, maybe you've bought a nicer policy, those get more expensive. let's say, we are trying to make sure that someone else is managing, and we are setting aside a nice reserve or spending money on the property, investing in the property so that it's worth more and the tenants are happier. Because I think vacancy ties very, very directly with the quality and condition of the property. So, based on those numbers and this purchase price with that interest rate, this asset does not perform well. You're seeing a loss in a few months. Obviously, a big loss when you have to rent it and get the property management paid for finding you a tenant and verifying them and getting them leased. Come summer, when you're paying for the lawn maintenance, you're seeing a loss every month. And overall, annually, you're seeing a loss. And then you can flip over here and see, okay, when does it start to look a little bit better based on some increases, based on, cash flow getting a little bit more positive. And then over here, these numbers are giving us kind of the long-term thought. Now, let's say we're trying to get a DSCR loan and we want it around 1.1. So we would come over here and we'd start playing with the purchase price first, because like I said, that house itself is probably overpriced. So what number does that house need to be listed at in order for an investor to be like, yes, this makes sense for my money, because I'm going to be able to pay for a property management company. I'm not going to be in the red every month, and it makes sense. A lot of investors want their lowest number to be around $200 a month in cash flow or better. So depending on how you want to use this number for your growth and your business, you can delete this one to get a more accurate generic expectation. And so now we're performing pretty well. You have a margin here that can go back into the property, and you can use that for your forecasting a little bit better, because the lender's not going to be budgeting for a lot of expenses that you might want to just think about yourself. So for underwriting purposes on getting a DSCR that you want, and a lender's probably not even going to factor in the management costs, but you really need to. But now we're about where we should be in order for this to get a DSCR loan and for you to have some nice, comfortable cash flow for this to make sense. So, theoretically, this house might work for you and your goals if you were able to get it for $330,000. Put 25% down, see a 7.25% interest rate. That might make the numbers make sense. That is the purpose of this sheet, so that you can tinker and toy around and say, okay, well, I don't even like that. I want to buy it for less because I need to go put in AC. So we're going to touch 330. And then you can see what those numbers do on just an acquisition note. So, again, not selling sunshine and rainbows. The goal of this and most of my resources is to give you reality so that you can make the decisions that are best for you, because only you know the circumstances that you live in and what you're working with. I'm happy to jump on a call and always talk about thoughts and details, but I can never know all the nuances that are your life. So I like to give you what you can use to decide for you. Anyway, reach out if I can be helpful. My brain is yours to pick. Talk to you later.